Hey everyone, welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests today.
All right, everybody, welcome. Kyle Pertuis here with MindFit Coaching. We are excited again for another episode of Inspired Action, and we have three incredible guests with us today. I can't wait to hear their words of wisdom and just dive right back into this thing. And so, thanks for joining us. I'm gonna not hesitate. I'm gonna jump right in with Stephanie Witt, Vice President, COO of the Beacon Center of Tennessee, changing the lives of the citizens of Tennessee through public policy and representing them the best that they can up there. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm just going to pose the question to you. How do we create a culture of trust? Take it away.
Well, Kyle, thank you for having me, first of all. And second, that's such a great question because when you think about your culture, it can have a lot of different things that influence it, but trust is probably the most important thing. It impacts everything from how team members interact with each other to how we make decisions, and ultimately, if we're successful in achieving our goals. The most important thing, I think, is to lead by example. And the only way that you will earn the trust of others in your organization is by being transparent, admitting mistakes that you may make, and being consistent in your actions, and really building on some reliability with your team members so they know what to expect from you.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting, right? Because we often hear trust as a core value, right? But I think a lot of times it gets lost in the fact that it's not reciprocated. And so when you say things like being transparent and leading by example and show people not only that you're willing to trust them, but you in return are trustworthy, right?
Right.
So I think super important. Awesome. Okay, let's slide on over to David Wyatt, attorney. Uh, I mean, this guy, like I was saying earlier, he's done so much. He has launched this incredible South Carolina Hall of Fame in the state of South Carolina for former players, football players. And David, man, I'm first of all, I'm really happy to see you. It's been a while, and I am eager to hear your response to this question. I know you're involved in a lot of things, work with a lot of business owners. Tell me, in your opinion, how do we create a culture of trust?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, and appreciate it's an honor to be here with Stephanie and Greg and you. And this question of, creating a culture of trust is critical. And what, I like to do is get everybody on the same page. So it's, what is the shared vision? And then let's define the core values of this team. And so with the vision and the core values, people know where they're going and what's going to be expected of them. And as Stephanie says, you've got to model those core values. People do what they see the leaders doing. So developing the vision, the core values, and modeling that, and then creating that environment where people are safe to take risks, to fail, because I think you got to fail in anything to succeed. If you're not failing, you're not taking enough risks. So having that environment where people are giving their best, and as long as you're doing your best and living with integrity in the team and shooting for that vision, then I think that's the way you build culture and a team to succeed.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned vision and values, and I think that, again, to echo what both you and Stephanie have said around values, so often they're just words on a wall, right? Even you and I were having a conversation before they joined, and we're talking about substance over form. And I think a lot of times we see that, and they're not really lived, and we don't see the behavior or the action that's representative of those values. And something like trust, I think sometimes we got to be careful what we ask for, but I think it's such an important piece of how we communicate and how we show up for each other, right? All right, awesome. David, let's jump over to Greg George. Greg George, CEO of the Western Michigan chapter of Associated Builders and Contractors. He's up in the great state of Michigan, where they are connecting, protecting, growing, and defending the construction industry. Greg, talk to us, man, as you as you connect, protect, grow, and defend. How do you see, as leaders, how do we create a culture of trust?
Thanks, Kyle, for having me. And familiar with Beacon Center. I worked for the Mackinac Center for many years, so very familiar with the network. So it's awesome to be on. For me, it starts with me. It starts with you as the leader, and just being intentional and incredibly consistent, because trust isn't something that you can just happen to get. It's not accidental. You have to build it over time on purpose, and you just have to be incredibly proactive about it. You have to keep the team plugged in. I know David was talking about vision and values has been thrown out too, and you just have to be intentional with sharing the vision, sharing the why, because from experience, if you're not proactive and you're not sharing that with your team or amongst each other, you will spend time going in reverse and explaining it anyway. So take time to be very thoughtful and intentional about it. And then to like piggyback on some of the value stuff, our team built our values around trust. So like all of our values have that kind of baked in, like winning together and being innovative, leading with integrity. Trust isn't the value. The values are all about that. And so we've kind of built them around it. I think another key thing is to just ask good questions, shut up and listen. I think that that's huge. I say celebrate your gains. That builds trust, because a lot of times we're focused on where we want to be, where we're going, and what we're doing, and we forget to kind of look back and go, where did we come from? How did we get there? And if you don't do that, you don't celebrate kind of that journey to it, you don't build trust, because it never feels like you're executing and getting anything done. It's like, now it's what's the next thing? What's going to happen next? Be vulnerable and have fun. That's kind of the last couple things I have on that subject. Let's let it out there, show your human side. Sometimes you just have to do things that are just for your team. You might do something really silly that just they get, that no one else understands, including your customers. But man, it goes a long way, and it works.
Love it. Hey, real quick, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking, as leaders, as you guys have had experience and you've grown in your careers, and you've worked for leadership that was discouraging failure or risk taking, and you work for those that have, and you kind of form your own leadership style. And so when we talk to teams and others about, well, yeah, you've got to be willing to share and be transparent and all those things. So what do you guys think, just real quickly, how do we encourage that type of honest communication, right? Because trust has to have that level of honest communication in order for it to really, be sustainable. So what are your thoughts, Greg? I'll just start with you and then bounce over to David or Stephanie. How do you encourage honest communication?
You got to do it yourself. So you have to be willing to kind of say things that you don't want to say, and just open up who you are. I think you can't expect others to do it, whether they're on your board or part of your team. If you're not doing it, no one else is going to do it. And so I think starting and setting the example is helpful. One of the things that it's important to know, like, who's going to probably want to do that first. You have different voices on your teams, different voices on your boards, different voices for your members or your customers or something. And so understanding what those are and allowing some of those quieter voices to maybe go first and be heard first and not get drowned out is also kind of key. But it starts with you, right? It starts with you being intentional about being vulnerable, and then being patient while it takes time for your team, I think, to catch on that it's okay to do it.
Right on. Stephanie, what would you add to that?
There also just has to be mutual respect between team members, and it has to happen at different levels within the organization. Similar to what David was saying, you can't undermine people or disrespect them or make them feel like they can't be heard. You need to listen. And then on the flip side of the respect, you also have to have accountability. So you have to hold each other accountable for what you say you're going to deliver on. and be able and willing to create an environment that will call people out, or talk about things that need to be talked about, and not just push things aside or push it under the rug and not talk about the things, because people are talking about it. It's just a matter of whether or not they're bringing it to the surface for everybody to talk about.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. David, what would you add to close us up?
Yeah, well, Stephanie and Greg are spot on when it comes to intentionality and I think accountability. For us, our 6 core values: mutual respect is where it starts. Then there's commitment, accountability, add value, excellence, and love. Those are our 6 core values. And it's got to be authentic. And that's, I think, where we've all probably read the Good to Great book, where he talks about getting the right people on the bus in the right seats. And I think that's what we're talking about here. You got to be authentic. You got to be being accountable. And if you're not delivering, like you said, on form or substance, you got to deliver on form and substance. And, I had one of my mentors early on say, "Wyatt, you got to deliver on form and substance, and you're not delivering on either one right now." So, there's some honest accountability, which, made me step up, look in the mirror and say, he's right, and raise my game, raise the level of the team. And that's what I try to do for my team.
I love that, man. Authenticity, intentionality, and accountability. I don't think you can go wrong if you really lean into those things. All right, you guys, I'm going to make it a wrap for this episode of Inspired Action. I appreciate y'all's input. Stay tuned. We appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you in the next episode.